Take a breath with me. Just one slow breath, in and out. Wherever you are right now, whatever room you're sitting in, whatever thoughts have been circling your mind tonight, I want you to know that this moment, right here, was made for you. You didn't stumble onto this by accident. Something in you has been tired, something in you has been carrying more than you've said out loud. And tonight, we're going to set some of that weight down. So let your shoulders drop, let your jaw unclench, let your hands rest open instead of curled into fists around everything you've been holding on to. Because here is the truth I want to plant in you tonight. Whatever you are carrying, it is not too heavy for God. Not the debt that keeps you up at night, doing math in the dark. Not the diagnosis you haven't told anyone about. Not the marriage that feels more like two roommates than two people in love. Not the child you worry about every single day. Not the career that stalled out when you thought you'd be somewhere else by now. None of it, not 1 ounce of it, is too heavy. I know it feels heavy to you. I know some nights it feels like the weight is going to break you in half. But there is a difference between what is heavy to you and what is heavy to the one who holds the weight of everything that exists. And that difference is where your peace is going to come from tonight. Let's talk about the weight for a minute. Because I don't want to rush past it. I don't want to pretend it isn't real just to get to the comfort part faster. Your weight is real. Maybe your weight is worry, the kind that never really turns off. You wake up with it already running in the background. You go through your day with it humming underneath every conversation. You lie down at night and it gets louder instead of quieter. Maybe your weight is grief. Someone is missing from your life who used to be in it every day. A parent, a friend, a version of a relationship that used to work and doesn't anymore. A dream you buried because it wasn't going to happen the way you planned. Maybe your weight is guilt, something you did or didn't do, something you said in anger that you can't take back, a choice you made years ago that still shows up in your chest sometimes without warning. Maybe your weight is fear, fear about your health, fear about your finances, fear about your children growing up in a world that feels less safe every year, fear that you're not enough, not a good enough parent, not a good enough spouse, not a good enough person. Maybe your weight is exhaustion, not the kind that a good night's sleep fixes, but the kind that lives in your bones, the kind that comes from years of being the strong one, the one everyone leans on, the one who never gets to fall apart because someone has to hold it all together. I see you, and more than that, God sees you. And here's what I need you to understand tonight. You were never designed to carry all of that alone. You were never meant to be the one holding up the sky. Think about that for a second. How much pressure you put on yourself to fix things that were never yours to fix in the first place. How many nights you've spent trying to control outcomes that were never within your control. How much energy you've spent gripping tightly to things that needed to be released. There is a kind of exhaustion that comes specifically from carrying what was never meant to be carried by human hands. And I think that's the exhaustion a lot of us are living in right now. So tonight, I want to invite you into something different. Not into pretending the weight doesn't exist, but into laying it down in front of something bigger than you. Picture it for a moment. Whatever your burden looks like, maybe it's shaped like a stack of unpaid bills. Maybe it's shaped like a phone call you're dreading. Maybe it's shaped like a memory you keep replaying. Picture yourself physically setting it down, not throwing it away, not pretending it never happened, just setting it down the way you'd set down a heavy bag after a long walk. And picture God, not as a distant, disinterested force somewhere far away, but as someone close. Someone who has been walking beside you the entire time, even when you couldn't feel it. Someone with hands strong enough and steady enough to hold what you've been holding. You don't have to hand him a smaller version of your problem. You don't have to clean it up first. You don't have to have the language figured out. You just bring it as it is. Messy, unresolved, painful, and you set it down. I want you to sit in that image for a moment. Let it be real. Let yourself imagine what it would feel like to walk without that weight strapped to your back for even 1 hour. Now, here's something important. Setting it down doesn't mean the situation disappears instantly. Your bills don't vanish. The relationship doesn't heal overnight. The diagnosis doesn't reverse itself in a single evening. But something does shift. The way you carry it shifts. Instead of carrying it like it's entirely up to you, instead of white-knuckling your way through every hour, you start to carry it differently. Lighter, because you're not doing it alone anymore. because you've handed the heaviest part of it to something big enough to hold it. There is a kind of strength that isn't about gritting your teeth and pushing through. It's the strength of releasing your grip and trusting that you're still going to be okay. That kind of strength is quieter. It doesn't look like much from the outside, but it changes everything on the inside. I want you to think about the vastness of what you're trusting tonight. Think about the size of the universe. The scale of it is almost impossible for our minds to hold. Galaxies upon galaxies, more stars than we could ever count in 100 lifetimes. And the same intelligence, the same power, the same presence that holds all of that together. That same presence is aware of you, aware of your specific burden, aware of the exact shape of what's weighing you down tonight. That should change something in you. If something that vast can also be that personal, then your problem, however big it feels to you, fits easily into hands that large. Your mountain is not too tall, your ocean is not too deep, your night is not too dark. Let's talk about some of the specific things people carry, because I think it helps to name them out loud, even in a recording like this one, even when no one else can hear you say it back. If you're carrying financial strain right now, if you check your bank account with a knot in your stomach, if you've had to say no to things you wish you could say yes to, if you lie awake calculating and recalculating numbers that never seem to add up the way you need them to, I want you to hear this. Your provision is not dependent only on your own effort. You can work hard, you can be responsible, you can do everything right. And still, the outcome is not entirely in your hands. And that's actually good news, because it means you're not required to solve this by sheer force of will alone. If you're carrying a broken relationship, a marriage that feels distant, a friendship that ended without closure, a family member you haven't spoken to in years, I want you to know that healing doesn't always look the way we picture it. Sometimes healing is reconciliation. Sometimes healing is peace even without reconciliation. Sometimes healing is simply no longer letting that wound control your days. Whatever your specific situation needs, it is not too complicated, too painful, or too far gone to be tended to. If you're carrying worry about your health or the health of someone you love, I know that fear has a particular kind of grip. It can hijack a day, a week, a season. But even here, you are not required to manage every outcome alone. You can take the practical steps, you can see the doctors, you can follow the guidance you're given, and still hand the deeper fear over to something bigger than your own two hands. If you're carrying the weight of parenting, the sleepless nights, the worry about who your children are becoming, the guilt over what you think you're getting wrong, I want you to exhale for a second. You are not the only force shaping your children's lives. You are important, deeply important, but you are not alone in it. There is a wider care surrounding your family, even on the days it doesn't feel that way. If you're carrying career disappointment, the job that didn't work out, the promotion that went to someone else, the dream that hasn't materialized on the timeline you hoped for, I want you to consider that delay is not the same as denial. Some of what you're waiting for is still coming. It's just coming through a door you haven't walked through yet. If you're carrying loneliness, the quiet ache of feeling unseen, even in a room full of people, I want you to know that presence doesn't always look like a crowd. Sometimes the deepest presence is the quiet kind, the kind that sits with you in the silence and doesn't ask you to perform or explain yourself. Whatever is on your list tonight, whatever you would have named if I had asked you directly, it belongs on the list of things that are not too heavy. Now, I want to talk about rest for a while, because I think rest is one of the most underrated forms of trust. When you truly believe something is being handled by someone bigger than you, you rest. Not because the problem is solved, but because you're no longer required to solve it alone at every waking moment. Rest becomes possible the moment you stop believing everything depends entirely on you. So tonight, as you listen to this, I want you to practice that kind of rest. Let your body settle into whatever you're lying on or sitting in. Let your breathing slow down. Let your mind stop running the same loop it's been running all day. You can pick the weight back up tomorrow if you need to. You can go back to problem solving in the morning. But for tonight, for these minutes, you are allowed to simply exist without solving anything. I want to gently remind you of something else. You have survived every hard night up until this one. Every single time you thought you couldn't handle what was in front of you, you found a way through. Sometimes barely. sometimes with help you didn't expect, sometimes just by putting one foot in front of the other until the sun came up again. That pattern isn't a coincidence. That pattern is evidence. Evidence that you have never actually been carrying this alone, even in the seasons when it felt that way. Think back on your life for a moment. Think of a time when things felt impossibly hard, a season you weren't sure you'd survive. And now, here you are, on the other side of it, listening to this. You made it through, not because you were strong enough to force your way through everything by sheer will, but because something held you up, even on the days you didn't have the strength to hold yourself up. That same something is holding you now. I want to speak to the specific kind of tired that comes from being strong for everyone else. If you're the one people call when they're falling apart, if you're the one who shows up for every crisis, every emergency, every 2 a.m. phone call, but no one shows up for you in quite the same way. I see that, and I want you to know that you are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to need care yourself. You are not required to be endlessly strong to be worthy of rest. Let your weight down tonight, not because someone told you to be strong for one more day, but because you are permitted to not be strong for a little while. I want to address the shame that sometimes attaches itself to struggle. Some of us were taught, without anyone ever saying it directly, that needing help is weakness, that struggling means failing, that admitting you're overwhelmed is somehow a character flaw. I want to gently push back on that tonight. Needing help is not weakness, it is honesty. It takes more strength to say, I can't do this alone, than it does to keep pretending you can. So, if tonight is the first time in a long time you've allowed yourself to admit how heavy things have felt, I want to honor that. That admission is not a failure. It's the beginning of relief. Let's slow down even more here. Let's just breathe together for a moment. In and out. In and out. As you breathe, I want you to imagine setting down one specific thing, just one, the heaviest one, if you can name it, and picture it leaving your hands. Picture your hands opening, your fingers releasing, and that burden falling gently into hands that are far more capable of holding it than yours ever were. You don't have to carry it perfectly. You don't have to carry it at all tonight. I want to talk now about what happens after the setting down. Because releasing a burden isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of a different kind of walking. When you stop gripping so tightly to outcomes, you start to notice things you couldn't see before. You start to notice small mercies. A text message that arrives at exactly the right moment. An unexpected bit of kindness from a stranger. A solution that appears from a direction you never considered. These things were probably happening all along, but you were too weighed down, too focused on gripping the burden to notice them. Peace doesn't always arrive as the absence of difficulty. Sometimes peace arrives as the presence of steadiness in the middle of difficulty. You can still be in a hard season and feel a strange, settled calm underneath it. That calm is available to you tonight, even if your circumstances haven't changed yet. I want you to consider the idea that your current chapter is not your whole story. Whatever is happening right now, however overwhelming it feels, it is one chapter, and chapters end, new ones begin. The version of you sitting here tonight, weighed down by whatever you're weighed down by, is not the final version of your story. You are allowed to hope again, even if hope has disappointed you before, even if you've built up walls to protect yourself from being let down one more time. I want to gently invite you to lower those walls, just a little, just for tonight. Hope isn't naive. Hope isn't pretending everything is fine when it isn't. Hope is choosing to believe that the story isn't finished, even in the middle of a hard chapter. I want to talk about timing for a moment, because I think a lot of our exhaustion comes from fighting timing. We can't control. We want the resolution now. We want the answer now. We want the healing now. And when it doesn't come on our schedule, we interpret the delay as absence. We assume that because something hasn't happened yet, it isn't going to happen at all. But delay is not the same as absence. A door that hasn't opened yet is not necessarily a door that will stay closed forever. Some of what you're waiting for is being prepared, even in the waiting, even in the silence, even when it feels like nothing is happening. I want you to consider that some of your hardest seasons might actually be preparation for something you can't see yet. Not every difficulty is punishment. Not every hard season is meaningless. Sometimes the very thing that feels like it's breaking you is actually shaping you into someone capable of carrying something better on the other side. That doesn't mean your pain is deserved, or that you should be grateful for suffering. It simply means that pain doesn't have to be wasted. It can become part of a larger story, even when you can't see the shape of yet. Let's return to rest one more time before we close, because I want this recording to leave you lighter than it found you. Tonight, before you fall asleep, I want you to try something. I want you to name, either out loud or silently, 3 things you're setting down. They can be big or small: a fear, a grudge, a worry, an expectation. Name them and imagine physically releasing each one. Then I want you to name 1 thing you're grateful for. Even in the middle of everything hard, gratitude has a way of anchoring us back to the present moment, back to the fact that not everything is broken, even when a lot feels broken. You are not required to have it all figured out tonight. You are not required to know how your situation resolves. You are only required to set the weight down and trust that you are being held while you rest. Whatever you're carrying isn't too heavy, not for the one who's been carrying far more than you realize all along on your behalf. So breathe. Let your body sink a little deeper into wherever you're resting. Let your mind quiet a little more with every passing minute. You are safe. You are held. You are not alone in this. Let the silence between these words do some of the work tonight. Let yourself simply be, without performing, without problem solving, without carrying. You've done enough for today. You've carried enough for today. Let it rest now. Let yourself rest now. Whatever tomorrow asks of you, you'll be ready for it. But tonight belongs to rest. Tonight belongs to release. Tonight belongs to peace. You are not too much. Your burden is not too heavy. And you, exactly as you are right now, in this moment, you are enough. Rest well tonight. You are held. You are loved. And you are not carrying this alone. Before we go further into rest, I want to sit with you in one more layer of this, because I think there's a version of you tonight that still doesn't quite believe what I've said. A part of you that's thinking, that sounds nice, but you don't know what I'm dealing with. And you're right, I don't know the specifics, but I know this. Nothing you're dealing with is outside the category of things that can be carried by something bigger than you. There is no burden so unusual, so specific, so uniquely yours, that it falls outside the reach of that kind of care. Your situation is not the exception. It is not too complicated, too shameful, too broken, too far along, or too small to matter. Every single thing you've been afraid to say out loud fits inside the same category as everything else. It's a weight, and weights can be set down. I want to talk for a moment about the difference between carrying something and being crushed by something. Carrying implies movement, forward motion, the ability to keep walking even while holding something difficult. Being crushed implies stillness, collapse, an inability to move at all. A lot of us have crossed that line without realizing it. We've gone from carrying to being crushed, and we've just called it handling it, because that's what we've always done. If that's you tonight, if you've been crushed rather than simply carrying, I want you to hear this gently but clearly. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to admit that this particular weight has become too much for you to bear on your own strength. That admission is not the end of your strength. It's the doorway to a different kind of strength, one that doesn't depend entirely on you. Let's talk about control for a moment, because I think control is at the root of so much of our exhaustion. We hold on tightly because we believe that if we let go, everything will fall apart. We believe that our grip is the only thing keeping the situation from collapsing entirely. And so we grip harder. We plan more. We worry more. We try to think 3 steps ahead of every possible outcome. But here's something worth considering. How much of your gripping has actually changed the outcome? How many of the things you've stayed up worrying about actually turned out the way you feared? And how many of them resolved themselves in ways you couldn't have controlled or predicted, no matter how tightly you held on? I'm not saying effort doesn't matter. I'm not saying you shouldn't plan, shouldn't work hard, shouldn't take responsibility for what's actually yours to take responsibility for. I'm saying there's a difference between responsible effort and anxious control, and most of us have blurred that line so thoroughly that we don't even notice which one we're operating from anymore. Tonight, I want to invite you to loosen your grip just slightly. Not to become careless, Not to stop caring about outcomes, but to release the belief that everything depends on your ability to control every variable. Some variables were never yours to control in the first place. I want to speak now to those of you who feel like you've prayed about something for so long that you've stopped expecting an answer. Maybe you've asked for the same thing so many times that it's started to feel pointless, like shouting into a canyon and only hearing your own voice come back. I don't have an explanation for every unanswered prayer, every delayed healing, every situation that hasn't resolved the way you hoped. I won't pretend I do, but I will say this. Silence is not the same as absence, and delay is not the same as refusal. Something can be happening beneath the surface of your circumstances even when nothing visible has changed yet. Keep asking. Keep hoping. Not because hope guarantees a specific outcome on a specific timeline, but because hope keeps you soft, keeps you open, keeps you from hardening into someone who has given up on the possibility of things getting better. A hardened heart protects itself from disappointment, but it also protects itself from joy. I don't want that for you. Let's talk about identity for a moment, because I think a lot of the weight we carry gets tangled up with who we believe we are. If you've internalized the belief that your worth is tied to your productivity, your performance, your ability to hold everything together, then every struggle feels like evidence against your value as a person. Every mistake feels catastrophic. Every setback feels like proof that you're failing at the fundamental task of being a person. I want to untangle that for you tonight. Your worth was never dependent on your performance. You are not more valuable on your best day than you are on your worst day. The exhausted version of you, the overwhelmed version of you, the version of you that hasn't gotten anything done today except survive, is just as valuable as the version of you that has everything figured out. That's a hard thing to actually believe, not just hear. So let it sit with you for a while. You are valuable, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. And who you are does not change based on how heavy your circumstances currently feel. I want to gently talk about anger for a moment too, because sometimes underneath our exhaustion is a quiet anger we haven't given ourselves permission to feel. Anger at the situation, anger at people who hurt us, sometimes even anger at God for allowing things to get this hard in the first place. That anger is allowed. It doesn't disqualify you from being cared for. It doesn't push you further away from whatever peace you're seeking tonight. Bring the anger too, if it's there. You don't have to arrive at this moment feeling perfectly calm and grateful. You're allowed to arrive frustrated, exhausted, even resentful, and still be met with the same steadiness that's been offered to you this whole time. Let's return to the picture of setting things down, because I want to layer in something new here. Imagine that after you set your burden down, you don't have to walk away from it forever, disconnected and uninvolved. You can still care about the outcome. You can still hope for healing, for provision, for reconciliation. You're just no longer required to carry the full weight of making it happen entirely by yourself. It's the difference between hauling something on your own back for miles and walking beside someone who's carrying the heaviest part of the load while you walk unburdened next to them. You're still on the journey. You're still present. You're just not doing the heaviest lifting alone anymore. I want to talk about tomorrow for a moment, because I know part of you is already thinking about it, even as you're trying to rest tonight. Tomorrow will likely bring some of the same challenges back. The bills will still need to be paid. The relationship will still need attention. The health concern will still need to be managed. Setting the weight down tonight doesn't erase tomorrow's tasks. But here's what changes. You get to walk into tomorrow having rested tonight. You get to face those same challenges from a place of restored energy instead of complete depletion. Even a few hours of genuine rest, genuine release, can change how capable you feel walking into a hard day. So, let tonight do that work. Let it restore something in you, even if it doesn't solve everything. Rest is not a small thing. Rest is not a luxury reserved for people whose lives are easier than yours. Rest is necessary, and you deserve it as much as anyone else does. I want to close this part of our time together with a simple truth. One I want you to carry with you long after this recording ends. You are known, in the specific, detailed way that most of us go our whole lives wishing someone would know us. Every worry you haven't said out loud, every fear you've kept hidden even from the people closest to you, every quiet ache that shows up at 2 in the morning when the house is silent. None of it is a surprise. None of it is too much. None of it disqualifies you from being deeply, unconditionally cared for. Let that truth settle into you as we move toward the end of our time together. Let your breathing slow even further. Let your body feel heavier against whatever is supporting it. In the good way, the way that means you're finally letting go of tension you've been holding for longer than you realized. Whatever you brought into this recording, I hope you're leaving with something lighter. Not because the situation changed in the last 40 minutes, but because you practiced something important. You practiced trust. You practiced release. You practiced rest. Do that again tomorrow, and the day after that. It doesn't have to be perfect. You'll probably pick the weight back up out of habit sometimes, and that's all right. Just remember, you can set it down again as many times as you need to, for as long as you need to. You are not too heavy a burden for anyone to love. Your circumstances are not too heavy for something bigger than you to hold. And tonight, right now, you're exactly where you need to be. Rest well, let go a little more. You are held, you are seen, and you are never carrying this alone.